Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1168, 1168, June the 21st, 2020, Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, June the 21st, I guess, is that the first day of summer? I think so. Longest day of the year. Plenty of sunlight out there and a lot of heat and humidity around here right now. Had a very nice week last week. It was cool and sunny for the most part, but we're getting some of that heat now. Yesterday I forgot one last thing. When I was telling you about how I came up with the nickname for Hillary Rotten Clinton, and I came up with the nickname the Rotten Reverend, and I was telling you, how that all came about, I forgot probably the most important thing, which is really, it was this statement that I actually really caused me to come up with the name Rotten Reverend. Was, in addition to everything I said yesterday, there was also a point in that fluff piece interview that they were doing where the Rotten Reverend actually said that at one time she actually contemplated becoming an ordained minister. She said, yes, at one time I actually seriously considered becoming an ordained minister. And it was at that point, I think that's when it popped in my head, the Rotten Reverend Clinton. And I think that's actually the phrase, the thing she said that compelled me to come up with that line. So I guess we have to thank the Rotten Reverend for helping me come up with her nickname. But just wanted to throw that in there. Now don't forget to get in your vote on the comment section of this video for Dumbass of the Week. I know it's a tough choice. It's a very tough choice, especially the last couple of weeks. There's so many different candidates out there. But just do the best you can. That's what I do. Sometimes it's a close call, but anyway, get your vote in for Dumbass of the Week in the comments section of this video by no later than 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, now we have two very important stories to talk about today. One is kind of a follow-up to the story that occurred the last 2 days. We now have some more activity going on here, and of course we're talking about Attorney General Barr firing this top prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, Jeffrey Berman. Now, as you know, apparently from what's being reported, Barr talked to him, I think it was on the phone, I don't think it was in person, I think it was on the phone, and Barr relayed to him that he wanted him to step down and believed at the end of the conversation it was clear that he would step down. But then, as we know, after that happens, this guy Jeffrey Berman comes out and says, I'm not stepping down until they confirm a new appointee, knowing good and well that could take 6 months, right? In other words, he wants to stay in the position he's in. Now, we know a lot about Jeffrey Berman. His office is basically associated. The Southern District of New York might as well be an extension of lawfare. He is essentially a lawfare operative, posing as the top attorney general or top U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. And so, after he refused, Barr took the next step, which is just to end it very quickly, and called President Trump this morning, or yesterday morning, and said, hey, this U.S. attorney that I need to get rid of, he's refusing, so you can fire him, and that'll be it. So Trump did give Attorney General Barr the authority, it's from the president, to fire Berman, and now he is gone. Gone, baby, gone. Now, there's a lot going on here, so let's try to work through this deal here and try to understand exactly what's going on here, and then look at the bigger picture of what's been going on with Attorney General Barr for the past almost year, well, since May of last year, when he launched the investigation into the coup plotters. A lot of things have happened during that time. So, of course, as I just mentioned, Berman's office played a lead role in several of the high-profile cases that were brought by Uncle Bob the Executioner Mueller and his wise-ass Wiseman Pitbull. Mueller and Wiseman brought most of the cases from the Mueller witch hunt through the Southern District of New York, Berman's office, where you'll find a lot of deep staters. Now, the jurisdictions, which is where you've seen Attorney General Barr making a lot of changes, the jurisdictions were likely John Durham's charges will be filed or where these cases will be taken up will likely take place in the Southern District of New York, the Eastern District of New York, the Eastern District of Virginia, the District of Criminals in Washington, as well as Main Justice. And it is exactly in these places where over the past year, Attorney General Barr has been moving a lot of people in and out. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that he's preparing the battlefield for John Durham. He's going to make sure that John Durham doesn't have to battle the deep state and all these jurisdictions where his cases will likely be tried. And so I think it's really started back about 6 months ago when Jenny Rhee had assumed that she was going to assume the top position and I think it was Eastern District or one of these other districts. She was going to be the top dog. But of course Barr knew that she's dirty. She was part of the Mueller crew as well, or part of one of the top legal people that were going along with the coup, at the very least, cooperating with the coup. And so she was expecting to get a top U.S. attorney position, but Barr, instead, she didn't get it. Instead, she got moved off and pushed off into the bureaucracy. And if you look what's been going on with Barr over the past year, the way he's been moving people out of these jurisdictions, clearly he's been thinking about this for a long time. He's been preparing the battlefield for a long time. But now we must be getting awfully close to something happening, because the following individuals just in the last month and a half have been moved out. And they would be, of course, Berman, probably the biggest fish. And then, of course, Jody Hunt. Noel Francisco has just announced that he's leaving, Solicitor General, as well as Dana Buente. Now, what's interesting about all this is that all of these people are leaving on the same day, July the 3rd. Berman, Hunt, Francisco, and Buente will all be parting ways on July the 3rd. So there must be something very, very key about the beginning of July that Barr wants these people out and he wants the new people in. Or at least ways he wants good acting people in place. So clearly Barr is preparing the battlefield for John Durham to make sure he doesn't have to run into these deep staters who will only thwart his efforts at charging and prosecuting the criminals, because these are the same people in a lot of these situations who were cooperative at the very least with the Mueller investigation witch hunt. And of course now it's becoming quite clear why Attorney General Barr has brought in 8 separate U.S. attorneys to work with Durham, and now we know why he went outside of Main Justice in D.C. and New York to get all these prosecutors and U.S. attorneys. He's pulling them from Texas with John Bash, the other one from Missouri, of course Durham from Connecticut. So he's pulling these U.S. attorneys from places outside, and most of them are Republicans, by the way, and he's pulling them from outside all these jurisdictions where all the malfeasance took place, where all these various locations were cooperating with Uncle Bob the Executioner. This is where a lot of Uncle Bob's cases were tried in the previous jurisdictions I just mentioned. And so Barr has been bringing in people from the outside, and he's been investigating these things with these outsiders. So I think that explains why the old guard is being removed. They are either going to be, now some of these people, as I'm telling you this, some of these people who have been moved out, such as Dana Buente, Jody Hunt, people like that, maybe Jenny Rhee, some of these people who've been moved out may have been moved out because they are going to be charged with crimes for being involved in the coup. But some of these people might just be what Barr perceives as possibly a barrier, some people who might interfere or block the cases that Durham is going to be bringing. But I think one thing is for sure, when you look at all this activity going on, that the time now is very short. It is coming, and it is coming soon. So I think we can be pretty sure that Barr and Durham want to at least ways get this first wave. I think there'll be several waves, but they want to get the first wave of indictments out before the two parties begin their conventions, which is the middle of August. So I would think that somewhere between now and the first or second week of August is when you're going to see Durham and Barr drop the hammer on the first round of indictments, and I think that there'll be a second, third, possibly another third or fourth, maybe 5 rounds. It's going to take quite some time, probably a year, to go through all the various people who are going to be facing indictments or some sort of dismissal or some sort of punishment for what they did, being part of the coup, either knowingly or unknowingly or what have you. So I think the events that are taking place, it appears to me that Barr is basically preparing the battlefield for Durham, and that we are now very, very close to these events happening. Now, Berman, as I said, at the Southern District of New York, his office prosecuted quite a few of these cases that came down from Mueller. So Berman certainly would have overseen or should have looked at all the evidence and everything involved in all these cases, which means it's hard to imagine that Berman is not compromised and that he wasn't somehow part of the coup. And the reason why he may be getting relieved from his duties, it could be just because Barr knows that he's dirty, and he doesn't want him blocking Durham's investigations or hampering his investigations. But it could also be that the reason he has to go now is because Durham might have already found incriminating evidence against him. Because you can bet, see, if you remember, back in, I think it was April, sometime in April, Barr was doing an interview, and he was telling, I think it was with Fox, and I think he was telling them that Durham's investigation had been moving along, and that he was now at that point where he was looking very, very closely at the events that happened between Trump's inauguration and actually even just when he was elected, and the appointment of Uncle Bob the Executioner. That time period right in there was crucial, that there was a lot of things happening, a lot of things going on that were unexplainable and very troublesome, according to Attorney General Barr. And this is when a lot of this stuff was being probably processed. And you can bet that Durham, in his investigation, has probably subpoenaed or gotten his hands on emails and texts and interdepartment documents between these district prosecutors and the Mueller team. There are probably many emails between Berman and Wiseass, between Ginny Rhee and Wiseass, between some of these people, Dana Buente and Wiseass. So my guess is that Durham has probably dug into and been able to find that some of these top U.S. attorneys in these 4 or 5 districts that handled a lot of the Mueller stuff were involved in the coup, based on the fact that Durham has probably been reading a lot of the emails, texts, communications, and documents between Mueller team people, specifically Wiseass, and some of these U.S. attorneys that prosecuted these cases. So my guess is he's stumbled onto something, and there must be something he's stumbled onto regarding Berman that would cause him to get rid of Berman, because he was only appointed a short time ago, less than 2 years ago. So he really hasn't had a very long tenure there. And remember, he was brought in to replace Preet Bharara, who was also corrupt. So I think Barr's actions tell us a lot. Now, as you know, we've been talking the past couple days about the fact that Schiff and Nadler, the Penguin and the Bug-Eyed Fool, are all excited about the fact that they're going to be launching an impeachment circus against Barr. Now, I doubt that Barr will even entertain coming to talk to them. Now, he would probably enjoy that situation if he had some time. I think he's just too busy right now with other things far more important than entertaining all of us and making a fool out of Nadler and the Bug-Eyed Fool. He'll probably send them a letter, though, because what they're going to try to do is impeach Barr. But it's all going to blow up on them. It's not going to work out, because they're going to try to say that Barr is going after Trump's political enemies or whatever, and that he's on this Russiagate coup plot hoax and all this sort of stuff. It's how they're going to spin it and everything like that. And it's not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is because Attorney General Barr is simply following the instructions given to him by the FISA court. The FISA court are the ones who ordered Attorney General Barr. They're the ones that said, hey, based on all these fraudulent FISAs that we were given from the previous administration, we want a complete review of every one of these cases, every one of these cases where a FISA was used, every one of these cases related to this whole conspiracy, including the investigations and everything else. And that is why Durham would have had, and Barr would have had the authority to subpoena or get their hands on all these text, emails, documents between these various jurisdiction top U.S. attorneys and the Mueller team. The FISA court ordered Barr to investigate all this. So that's all he's going to do is when the bug-eyed fool and the Penguin try to drop this rap on Barr and say, hey, you're doing all these investigations, on behalf of Trump, and this type of thing. Barr is simply going to send him a letter and say, well, look, here's a copy of the letter from the FISA court instructing me that I must do all these investigations. And so I've brought in outside U.S. attorneys to investigate everything because that's what I've been ordered to do by the FISA court based on the fraudulent FISAs from the previous administration. So Barr's got complete political cover. He's sitting back chuckling right now. He could care less. He's focused on a much bigger game right now. And that is the game that's coming up. And that's going to be holding the coup plotters accountable. Now, many of you will remember Devlin Barrett. Devlin Barrett. He was instrumental over there at the Washington Post. He was one of the people that the FBI or CIA or somebody was leaking information to during the Russiagate hoax, during the Mueller witch hunt. When all this was going on, Devlin Barrett was consistently getting information he should not have been getting. He wrote a lot of propaganda hit pieces. Now, he wrote an article on Friday, I think it was Friday, in the Washington Post. And he says in that article that there is now mass paranoia going on inside these selected U.S. attorney offices where Barr has been replacing these top attorneys. And a lot of paranoia also because the people who are investigating them are outsiders. Outside U.S. attorneys, outside of their districts. They probably thought that Barr would have these investigations done internally, where, of course, they could cover everything up. But instead, he's brought in outside U.S. attorneys to come in and investigate. And that is why there's mass paranoia going on, because they know that Barr's got their number, that they can't stop or cover up what is coming out. And when they see the top number one top U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, which is considered the crown jewel of the U.S. attorneys in these districts, when they see he's taken out, they know that nobody is safe. So clearly, this is creating a tremendous amount of fear and paranoia within all these top U.S. attorney prosecuting offices in Virginia, the 3 in New York, the 2 in Virginia, D.C., and of course the Main Justice. All this activity that Barr's engaged in is all investigation. It's all being done by outside U.S. attorneys. And that's why these people are paranoid, because they don't know what's going on. They don't know what's being learned. They don't know who is under the microscope. They don't know who is already probably under sealed indictment. They don't know anything. They just know there's a lot of things going on. They're probably hearing a lot of things, and they're watching Attorney General Barr prepare the playing field by taking out their friendlies and putting in people who he trusts. I'll bet you they are nervous. Now, as soon as the fake news started reporting that Attorney General Barr had contacted President Trump on Sunday morning and said, hey, I fired this U.S. attorney, but he says he's not going to leave until we get a new U.S. attorney confirmed. And he said, that'll take probably 6 months. We need to get this guy out of here now. Now, I can't do that, but you can. So, Mr. President, would you like to fire this U.S. attorney, Berman? And Trump said, sure, he's fired. Tell him he's fired. So that's how that happened. Now, once that happened and word got out that Trump had just issued the firing of Berman, Jimmy the Weasel, Comey, suddenly gets an op-ed over at the Washington Post. Man, that was quick. Really quick. So Comey gets a op-ed published over at the Washington Post right after the story breaks. And he says in the story that with Barr firing Berman and the president essentially firing Berman when Berman refused to leave, Comey said in his op-ed that something stinks. Yeah, oh yeah, something stinks, all right. Something definitely stinks. It's called the swamp. That's what you're smelling, Jim. And Trump is draining it. And what Comey is feeling here is that the people he was relying on to cover his ass had just been sent packing. There was nobody there left to provide cover for Jimmy the Weasel. So yes, you can bet he thinks something stinks. Oh yeah, something stinks, all right. It's you, Jimmy. You stink. And you suck as well. And Barr knows it. And Durham's got your number. I can absolutely 100% guarantee there's an indictment, multi-count indictment, with Jimmy the Weasel's name on it. And I'll tell you someone else who better be lawyering up as well is David Loffman. David Loffman. He was the top U.S. attorney at Maine Justice who was rubber stamping all of Mueller's witch hunt targets. He's also a very nervous man right about now. So that is my take on what is going on. Clearly, there is something happening, and something happening very soon. Barr is clearly moving a lot of people out. He wants them all gone by July the 3rd. There's something about that that tells me he wants these people out. He wants his new people in, and he would have a reason for doing that. And again, I think it's because he's preparing the battlefield. Because he knows it's going to be quite the battle. You still have a lot of deep staters in. And the rank and file, those are federal employees. Those are a little bit harder to deal with. But the political positions, the top people, those are political appointees. Essentially, they are career bureaucrats who move into those positions as a result of tenure. But they can be fired by the Attorney General without having to go through a process. And if that doesn't work, then you can always, the president can fire anybody in the executive branch. So basically, if they have to go that route, they certainly will. And obviously, Barr thought it was important enough that Berman has to go now that he called Trump on a Sunday morning on the day when he's going to make his big comeback rally. So it must have been very important to Barr not to let this thing go or flutter. He wanted to make damn sure that all these people who I mentioned at the top of the video, Buente and Jody Hunt and Berman and Noel Francisco and Jenny Rhee and all these people, he's getting them out, and he wants them out by July 3rd. Something going on. Now, that's my take on what I think is happening right now. I think we're getting very close, and I think we can see that, and we can see the response to that, because the deep staters know that the noose is tightening around them, and I think that explains a lot about what we see going on around the country right now. In fact, James Woods had a very good tweet over on hashtag Obamagate. So this morning over on hashtag Obamagate, James Woods tweeted out, if Obamagate needed this degree of insanity, riots, looting, murder, as a distraction, it must be a hell of a story. If Obamagate needed this degree of insanity, riots, looting, murder, as a distraction, it must be one hell of a story. He's saying exactly what I've been saying for the past couple of days, that it's looking more and more like this entire chaos and quasi-revolution, cultural revolution, whatever you want to call it, that's been occurring over the past couple of weeks may be initiated by Obama himself, along with his friend Soros and organizations that they fund and propagate. And it might very well be that they wanted to do all this as a distraction, and also to help them feed and cultivate and then feed a counter narrative, so that when the indictments come down, they can say, well, this is just a response. This is just more of tyrannical Trump and Barr and these people using the power of government to go after their political enemies. This is exactly the try to spin job that they're going to do. The media is going to assist them, but Attorney General Barr and Durham both understand one thing very clearly, right along with all these U.S. attorneys that they've put into this game, and that is that you can say what you want in the media. The Democrats can propagandize as much as they want in the media, or even on the floor of the House or the Senate, but ultimately these decisions are going to be decided in a courtroom by the evidence and the facts and the witnesses. And that's why Barr wants to make sure that Durham has a fair playing field when he gets into the actual arena, where these things will actually be decided and proven to be true or false. And I think that that's exactly what we're looking at. It's obvious to James Woods, it's obvious to me, and probably many of you. I know there's some doubters out there. I totally understand it. Totally understand it. So I'm not going to take any issue with people who say, nah, nothing's ever going to happen. You know, I don't believe that's the case, but I understand those of you who feel that way. I'm certainly not going to beat up on you for having those thoughts or feelings, because quite honestly, you're very justified in carrying that opinion. And normally I'd be right with you on that. But there's just too many things about this, having covered this story now for 3 years, there's just too many things that I see that tell me that something is coming in terms of prosecutions. I've predicted there'll be 3-4 dozen people, 35, 45, 50 people will go down in this deal, and a lot of them will be top key people. Now, maybe it won't be half that number, or a third of that number, or a quarter of that number, but I do believe we're going to see a fairly substantial number of people, particularly Strzok, Page, Comey, McCabe, Brennan, Clapper, people in that range. Of course, Kleinsmith, and you got a couple lawyers. I think Loffman has a lot of problems, and I think Weissman and Zelensky and a couple of the people on the Mueller prosecution team, they could be having some problems. I think you're going to see people from quite a few different areas, from the intelligence community, from like private contractors like Halper. You could see Christopher Steele charged. You could see some of these DOJ lawyers charged. Certainly the guys that were running the counterintelligence operation, FBI, certainly going to see those guys. And you could even make into the Obama administration, could see Samantha Rice having some issues. So I think that we're all looking at somewhere between 3-4 dozen people in the initial first couple rounds who are going to be indicted based on everything that I've covered in the past 3 years. They committed crimes, and they were part of a larger conspiracy, and it's obvious now. Just with what we know, and Barr and Durham know a hell of a lot more than we do, but just what we know. We know what happened. So does Barr. So does Durham. So does half the country. And the other half the country is going to be very, very shocked, because they've been watching fake news and they have no idea what is coming. It's going to hit them like a ton of bricks. And by the time they come out of the daze, after a couple months of when they finally realize that these prosecutions are happening and that Spygate or Obamagate is real, Obama really did target the Trump campaign with a coup plot, just about the time they recover from that, Biden is going to get his ass kicked in November. And here's something that's not going to help the Biden campaign any, and you'll be hearing about this probably in the next day or two. I'd say this will make it into the news cycle by Monday or Tuesday, and it will be a campaign ad for Trump probably within a week. Newly released documents from the Bin Laden raid. Newly released documents from the Bin Laden raid show that Bin Laden wanted to assassinate Obama because Biden would then be president, making it possible to destroy America. Wow, that's pretty explosive, don't you think? Documents, newly released documents from the Bin Laden raid show that Bin Laden was communicating that he wanted to take out Obama because he wanted Biden to become president, believing that if Biden was president, you could easily destroy America. That's not good for the Biden campaign. As far as John Bolton is concerned, it looks like the judge has ruled that the Bolton books can remain because there's nothing you can do to stop it. If you read the opinion, I did read the basic opinion. It may be a longer one, but I read a short version of it. Essentially, the judge said, well, the books have already been released. There's already 150,000 of them already out there. Can't really do anything about that now. But he did say that what they're looking at now is making sure that Biden cannot profit a single penny from the sale of any of those books, and the DOJ can now move forward if they want to prosecute Bolton for the unauthorized release of classified information. So the Walrus has a lot of problems, most of them legal and criminal. And by the way, the Trump rally, I just got through watching it before I did this video. Fantastic. 2 hours long. And this has got to strike fear in the hearts of the Biden campaign. When you see the number of people that Trump, I don't know how many people were there. I'm sure we'll get some numbers tomorrow. The arena was packed and jammed, shoulder to shoulder. There was no social distancing there. And outside, there was tens of thousands more. When the Biden campaign sees Trump bring in those types of numbers, and he can do this every day of the week. He can go anywhere in the country, even in blue states, he can go and bring in those types of numbers. The Biden campaign knows they can't even bring in 1,000 people probably. And it's going to put tremendous pressure on Biden to go out now that Trump has done it. It's going to force Biden. He's going to have to get out of the basement now and go out and start doing his own rallies. And when you watch Trump just blow through a 2-hour thing like that without even skipping a beat, I mean, he should be a little rusty, but he looked like he was totally on the top of his game. And you see how Trump can work the crowd into a frenzy, do a 2-hour speech and not even bust a sweat. And he can do that 7 days a week. And that's got to strike fear into the heart of the Biden campaign, because they know you can't put Biden, first of all, he can't probably draw more than 2,000 people anywhere, even in the heart of a blue state. And he certainly can't go more than 2 minutes without a gaffe, let alone 2 hours. And Trump was just hitting him today. I mean, it's going to be ugly. Checked in on Papagalopoulos' Twitter. On Papagalopoulos' Twitter, he posted up on Saturday morning, it's time. I agree, it is time, watching what's going on. And I should also mention that the bug-eyed fool Adam Schiff does not have immunity. Schiff does not have immunity. Don't listen to people who tell you he does. He doesn't. He does not have immunity. And he was part of the information warfare that was going on in support of the coup. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.